I love a shawl. Hi folks, it's Mary, aka MercyTriumphs, and this is my channel, Slow Crochet. This is episode 026. Today I want to talk about the 5 shawls that I have in my personal collection that I wear on rotation. Now, I love making shawls. They are absolutely one of my favorite things to make. And when I first started getting back into crochet after kind of a long hiatus, when crochet became my primary creative outlet, shawls were one of the things that I gravitated towards first. One of the things I love about them is they are just by nature cozy. You can feel so warm and wrapped up in them. You feel like you're getting a hug. Second of all, I love how interesting they can be. They can go with so many different outfits. They can be worn in a lot of different ways, but also you can find some really interesting and beautiful stitch patterns. And it's not just repetitively doing the same stitch over and over. Although there are shawls that are like that, which are equally beautiful, but for me, I like things that I could learn with and I could stretch my creativity with them. So I have made shawls for friends. I have made shawls to donate. I've made shawls just trying to figure out what to do with some yarn. And there was even a time when I was making so many shawls that one of my children did not know that yarn was called yarn. He thought it was called shawl. So what I'm doing today is focusing on the shawls that have stayed in my collection, because I realize just because I enjoy making it doesn't mean that I have to keep it. Just because I learned a lot or it's very beautiful doesn't mean that I have to keep it. And I've only kept 5 shawls, and I'm going to show them to you right now. The first shawl I have started life as a gift card to a local yarn shop that my husband picked up for me before I had really started getting back into crochet. And when I finally got over to that yarn shop, I cleared out some clearance yarn there, and I decided I was going to make a cardigan. And this was before I knew anything about gauge, anything about yarn weights. I hadn't even thought about that because up until that point I had made scarves, I had made some things that my great-grandmother had taught me, but I hadn't really made anything wearable. So I made the cardigan and I never wore it. So eventually I frogged it and I took some of that yarn and I created a shawl. Now this is one that I have kept. It is 100% wool. I couldn't tell you at all the brand. I know it's a worsted weight, but I wanted to keep it, number one, because it seems very versatile in my collection, but also because it reminds me of that time when my husband went out of his way to get me a special gift. And even in the process of frogging a project and remaking it, you know, I feel like that was kind of a symbol for our marriage in a lot of ways, that when you marry someone, you marry them as they are, but also you expect that they're going to grow and change and become even better with time. So that is something that we've done together, and I feel like this shawl is kind of a picture of how our marriage has grown and gotten better, more beautiful with time. The shawl pattern is Spring Showers by Maria Bittner, and here it is. Now, I love the different swaths of texture in this. It's a very flat texture. There's no bobbles or anything, but I really loved the differences here. It goes from lacy to a little bit thicker, and on the edges it kind of creates its own little edging there. So I added tassels just because that's something that I enjoy doing, and I followed this pattern completely. So despite the fact that it is a little bit lacy, it is quite cozy too. It is a little scratchy, but I don't really mind that because normally if I'm wearing wool, I'm going to be wearing it with something underneath it. So this is proper wool, it's not superwash. And I also love with this pattern, there's big holes here, so it's easy to do a really interesting shawl pin or a brooch with it. So that is shawl number 1. The second shawl in my collection, the second oldest, is one that I made several years ago when I bought my first and only Lion brand Santa sack. And in that Santa sack, I got 3 balls of their Touch of Yak in the color Alabaster, I believe. So I was really excited to have so much yardage. It was a 4-weight yarn, and I found the Crochet It For You shawl. And this is it. It's another straight triangle shawl. In fact, all of my shawls are triangle shawls. It's not too big. It's really almost a triangle scarf. And it is a 2-row repeat once you start going. What I love about this shawl is that it is a very effective design. Like, it almost creates a polka dot texture. And so when you're wearing something plain, you can dress it up with an extra print or a pattern in the shawl without being overwhelmed. So it can be a subtle piece, and it also makes a statement. It adds texture as you're dressing. But normally how I wear it is as a triangle scarf. Now, I did add tassels to it to all 3 corners, but on this particular one, I have a very special brooch, very special shawl pin that I keep attached. And I want to show it off right now. This is a handmade and hand-painted brooch by a very wonderful artist, Amy Uppetree, and I will link her Instagram down below. I love you, Amy. I love this brooch. And for this particular shawl, because of the holes being so big, I can slip the brooch in there to attach and show it off. So it doesn't take up too much space. When I'm wearing it, it doesn't overwhelm an outfit. It tucks easily in with like a blazer or a jacket. And I love the neutral color. Now, again, it's a very similar color to my first shawl. So that tells you something about me. I need my accessories to be somewhat plain so that way I can have more fun with my regular clothes. I like to dress in layers and different textures, and so if the colors are way too loud, then I don't want multiple things shouting in my outfit. I want like one thing that stands out. Maybe it's a bright hat, but then something like a shawl can speak for itself and add those beautiful layers of texture. My third shawl is one that is my absolute favorite color of green, and it's by one of my favorite designers, the Bruinen shawl by Jasmin, Räsänen. It's got the A with umlaut, so I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that. Apologies. This was made with the color olive of a yarn called 44th Street. And it was on clearance at Hobby Lobby in 2022, which was the first time that I was aware enough of the Hobby Lobby clearance that I could actually participate. So I got 2 balls of this, and it's a DK weight. It's an acrylic nylon blend. I just love this texture. This is one of my favorite shawls, and I always want to wear it. I love how lacy but also kind of thick it is. The yarn is so soft, and normally I do like to have something of a natural fiber in here, but it doesn't really matter that much for this one because it's just so wonderful. It's wonderfully drapey. I love how understated it can be. Because I used a DK weight yarn, it's easier to kind of scrunch up and to work around with. Bruinen is the name of the shawl, which is a Lord of the Rings reference, which I will always appreciate. I will always appreciate a good Tolkien reference. So Bruinen is the name of one of the rivers that goes through Rivendell. And you see kind of the inspiration of the waves in this design. The 4th shawl is one that has took me a long time to do. It's one that I had purchased some yarn and I wanted something really special with it. I had gone to Little Knit's website and I had seen people talk about Noro yarns. And finally I decided to buy some, and I bought Noro Curie, which is a DK weight yarn. It's a combination of silk and mohair and wool. And I bought it in 3 different colors. Finally, I decided on a pattern called Trilobite by Stepankova. It was one of those ones where I would have it by my bed and I would reach for it and just try to do a row or 2 at a time. So I did have 3 different colorways, and the top one is kind of the mossier green. The middle one is kind of a whites and creams in the brown, and then the last one is just solid brown. I love this pattern. I'm gonna say that throughout this video. I love this pattern. I love the Trilobites. To me, they look a little bit like pineapples gone wrong, but they do have some texture. There are post stitches in there to help create the Trilobite feel. So Trilobites are fossils, and they're just such a beautiful thing, and I thought this is really unique. And I did have to stop and think this wasn't a pattern that I had memorized that easily. It did take some time, but man, it was worth it. Once again, it's that perfect combination of solid and lacy. And so that wool in there makes it cozy, but also really nice and breathable. This is one that I will reach for even on the kind of day that's really sunny and bright, but it's a little bit chilly. This is a great one that, again, because it's a lighter weight yarn, I can kind of scrunch it up and still feel cozy with it. It is a little bit scratchy, to be honest. The wool is not superwash, but it is soft enough, and it has that kind of mohair and that kind of silk in it. So I have really enjoyed wearing it, and it's very versatile in my wardrobe. So definitely one I'm going to be hanging on to. The fifth and final shawl in my collection is actually another iteration of my first shawl, which I didn't do on purpose. It just turned out that way. It is, again, Spring Showers by Maria Bittner. And it was made using some authentic hand-dyed tonal by Yarn Bee, which I picked up in 2 hanks of 2 different colors in 2022 at Hobby Lobby's clearance. This is a fingering weight, 100% superwash merino, and so I had to find the perfect shawl to make it with. And yes, it took me forever, but here it is. I surpassed Miss Bittner's pattern, because our pattern ended, and then I kind of had to fudge my way around to get it this big. So you start to see a little bit of a softer side. Finally, it's a color other than a neutral. I do consider green and khaki to kind of be neutral colors in my opinion. But here we have some dusty blue, almost a peachy pink. You could call that Pantone's colors of the year. Back when they chose 2 colors, it was like the blue and the millennial pink. These 2 colors in particular, I think, work really well for my wardrobe because it'll go great with jeans. It'll go great with like a chambray dress or something of that nature. And it can blend in easily with a t-shirt because with the lighter colors and a more colorful thing, it feels a little bit more casual. I actually wore this one recently just on a Sunday to church. I just had a little dress with a belt to it, and I belted the shawl behind me. And, you know, right now it's still pretty warm outside, but you go inside and the air conditioning is crazy. So even though it's superwash wool, it's also quite breathable. And so I was able to be comfortable both walking to church out in the heat, and then once I was in there, I could cuddle up in it without it being too overly bulky. But it feels like a nice little bookend to have the one that started before I really even knew what I was doing, and now to have it again in something a lot finer than I would ever tend to work with. I have really enjoyed walking with you guys through my journey of just my 5 shawls that I've kept. If you go on my Ravelry site to look at my projects, you'll see a lot of other shawls. And I do want to give an honorable mention to the Catalina shawl by 2 of Wands. I've made that several times. In terms of a shawl that is fun to make, that keeps it interesting, and that is a larger kind of wrap size, and it has that wonderful kind of boho hippie vibe. I love the Catalina. You can't go wrong with it. If you're looking for an easy, kind of beginner friendly but still stretch you type of shawl, that's one of my favorites. Anyway, thank you so much for spending your time with me today, rambling on about shawls. So I want to know from you, are you a shawl person? Are you a triangle shawl person? Do you have a favorite pattern? Because I would love to look into those. It is coming on shawl season again, and I can't wait to start making some more. If you're new here, like, share, comment, subscribe. You know, we all kind of say that thing, but it really does encourage us, and it's really fun to interact with you guys. If I am not your cup of tea, thank you so much for listening this long. I do appreciate it, and I hope I'll see you again. Bye.